In Western Europe, there was a meteor that struck the lower end of the moon. And monks recorded that there was an explosion or a pop or something on the horns of the moon, because it was a crescent moon at the time. I mean, all over the world, people recorded any changes in the sky. Any supernova, any comet, any meteor, anything that was out of the ordinary was recorded with meticulousness. If there was a supernova, an exploding star at this time, all of the world would have recorded it. We would have known exactly when Jesus was born. There's nothing. Well, then Matthew just make up this story? People have thought that. It's like there's no record of this star. What is he talking about? He must be making, maybe it's just a figment of his imagination. Maybe it's just a legend that Matthew added to his birth narrative. Well, once again, highly doubtful that we're going to do that. Well, we got to keep looking then. Well, what was Matthew talking about then? What's this star? So again, this idea that it was as bright as day and shone both day and night, you know, in our Christmas carols, it just didn't happen that way. It couldn't have, because there's no record of it. Well, if Matthew isn't a liar and there's no record of anything unusual in the skies, then what was this star? Oh, I'm glad you asked. You always ask the right questions. I like this group. What was this star? Well, interestingly enough, these wise men were astrologers. These were advisors. Their job was to study the sky and to report to the king anything that changes so that he could make his decisions. That was their job. They were magicians, you could call them. But it wasn't the kind of astrology that we're used to in our newspapers. Oh, today you'll have a happy day, or your lucky number is 14, you know, or that kind of baloney. Astrology in general is just baloney. Just put that right out there. It's just baloney. Okay? But back then it was considered a serious science, because the planets and the stars, they moved with regularity. And this intrigued ancient peoples, that somehow that these were messages from the heavens to the earth. And if we could understand them, then maybe we could make better decisions. Kings of all over the ancient world relied on their astrologers for advice. And some were more charlatanry than others, let's just say. Remember when we studied the book of Daniel, those of you who have been around that long? Remember how King Nebuchadnezzar consulted with his magicians and astrologers, and then he came to Daniel and got the real story? This was common. So these wise men that we see here aren't kings. They were astrologer advisors to kings. So if they're looking at the stars, they would be more expert on changes that were subtle, that ordinary people wouldn't have necessarily then been trained would see. So the most likely explanation is that this is what's called an astrological conjunction. That means certain planets and stars seem to come together and form an unusual bright object in the sky. But not so bright that it shone both day and night and all that, but it would just, it'd be one of those things. And unless you were expert in the movement of the stars and planets, you wouldn't notice anything. So that explains why this star wasn't recorded by anyone. It wasn't anything unusual, but it was unusual enough to those who would be looking for it. Now, was there any unusual conjunction of stars between 8 and 4 BC? I'm glad you asked. Yes. Good question. Astronomer Michael Molnar wrote the book, The Star of Bethlehem, The Legacy of the Magi. in 1999 and discovered that Jesus was born April 17th, 6 BC. What's remarkable about this is that this fits exactly with our gospel records. 6 BC. It's between 8 and 4, right? April, spring, and we have this unusual conjunction of stars that would have caused the wise men to start their journey. Not end, start. That's important. Start their journey to find out where this king is. And I just include here a bit more from his book. It's really quite fascinating, the research that this astronomer has gone into to pinpoint the time and the astrological significances that are around it as well. Okay? And I like this one statement. In particular, there's a confirmation from a Roman astrologer that the conditions of April 17, 6 BC were believed to herald the birth of a divine, immortal, omnipotent person born under the sign of the Jews, which we now know was Aries, the ram. Okay? Mommy. Okay. I did not bring my clicker, and so this is just giving me trouble. All right. Furthermore, the coins of Antioch and ancient astrological documents show that there was indeed a star of Bethlehem as reported in the biblical account of Matthew. It's extraordinary that the clues in the Gospels and of history focus at this time. So I feel fairly comfortable in believing that Jesus was born on my birthday. Exactly 1,971 years before me. Just saying.
Modestly.
Modestly, of course. But again, what does this do to our Christmas narrative? Well, he wasn't born in the winter. The Gospels seem fairly evident about that. The shepherds wouldn't have been out at night. There would be no reason for that. Not if they wanted to protect their sheep. Okay? And then the time and the date seems to focus on 6 BC. So that's when Jesus was born. Now there's further evidence. You remember this horrible event?
Innocence.
The slaughter of the innocents, right? The wise men come to Herod. They say, we're here to worship the king. We've seen his star. And what did Herod say? What star? What king? And then what did he do? He asked his advisors, where's this king supposed to be born? And what did they say? Bethlehem. And so what did he do? How old? 2 years and older. Now stop. Think. Why did Herod order 2 years old? If Jesus had just been born, why not just say a baby? Why pick on the toddlers?
This takes a while for the Magi to see the baby.
There, now we're getting somewhere. The Magi saw the star at 6 BC, but they probably didn't arrive in Jerusalem till around
8 years. 8 BC.
No, forward. You have to go forward. Around 3 or 4 BC. So there was a considerable amount of time that had passed. Remember, this is not the age of texting someone, say, by the way, I'll meet you in Jerusalem next week. I mean, it took a while to get from one place or another. Mind you, when Caesar Augustus it began the enrollment in 8 BC, this is 6 BC. That's 2 full years later. Because again, people aren't texting around the world and flying and taking cars. They're walking. It took a while. If I order a taxation now, it's going to take at least 2 years or more to get to the other ends of the empire, let alone gather the taxes and records, and then report back. This took a long time. So it makes sense that 2 years after he gives this order that the whole world should be enrolled, that now Jesus is being born. That is not unusual for back then. It's actually pretty fast if you think about it. You think about a vast area from Britain to India. Britain to India. That's what the Roman Empire covered. Without telephones, without telegraphs, without cars, planes, trains, to be able to communicate to all the ends of the empire took a while. Okay? So, if Jesus was born in 6 BC, that would help explain why Herod ordered everyone 2 years old and under. Because he was born 2 years ago from when they first saw it. Get it? That makes sense. Because I've always wondered when I was a boy, why did he kill the 2-year-olds? If Jesus had just been born, just kill the babies. Just kill the babies. Like Pharaoh did, remember? Remember Pharaoh and Moses? What did he say? Once the babies are born, toss them into the Nile. Right there, not 2 years and under. Herod's order doesn't make sense unless the wise men told him when they first saw the star. When he was born. And he goes, 2 years ago, everyone 2 years and under gets killed. Right? So it makes sense. It fits the narrative. Okay? Here's another clue. And again, this is our lovely Christmas crash. It's wrong. God, ain't I mean? I'm just a Grinch, ain't I? Just stealing Christmas, you know? Just stealing Christmas. No, no, no. What's wrong about it is that the wise men weren't at the manger. That's what's wrong. They weren't there. We can take them out. Take them out. Move, move. They weren't there. But we traditionally put them there. And again, it's not so much that it's bad or wrong, or you're going to hell if you have wise men by your manger. No, no, no. We traditionally do this. It has great symbolic value. Because we have the shepherds over there. They're the poor. They come to Jesus the same way as the rich. Everyone needs Jesus. Whether you're rich or poor, you're coming to the same Jesus. Got it? Great symbol. Also, what do we normally have above here? Angels. So both heaven and earth focus on Jesus. The whole creche is focused on Jesus. Heaven and earth focus on Jesus. The uniting of heaven and earth is there in the manger. Both rich and poor come to him. See that? And not just that, but all of creation. What else do we have in the Christmas creche?
Animals.
Sheep, goats, animals, lambs, camels. All of creation comes to Jesus. It's a beautiful, powerful, symbolic image. So I don't want to take any of that away. I'm just saying that when the first Christmas occurred, the wise men weren't there. Well, how do you know that, Chip? Well, in Luke's account, in Luke chapter 2, it says that the shepherds saw the infant wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. The word there for infant is brephos. That's what that is. B-R-E-F-O-S. Brephos. And it means just that, a newborn, an infant. Greek is a very precise language. They had words to classify everything. They meant a newborn. When we read Matthew's account, when the wise men come to visit Jesus, it says the wise men found Jesus and his mother came to a house, not a stable. and saw the child with his mother and did him homage. Matthew 2:10 through 12. That word for child is not brephos, it's paidon. Paidon, where we get the word pediatric from. Paidon, P-A-I-D-O-N, paidon. That means a toddler or school-aged child, not an infant. The wise men saw a toddler, probably between 1.5 and 2 years old, in a house, it says, not a manger, not a cave. The shepherds saw Jesus when he was an infant in a manger, in a cave. The wise men came 2 years later, saw Jesus as a toddler in a house with his mother.
So why there's a difference between the two gospels?
It's not a difference, it's two different time periods of Jesus' life. When he was born, Luke. When he was a toddler, Matthew. And that's when the wise men came. The difference in Greek words is clear. The shepherds saw a newborn, an infant. The wise men saw a toddler. Big difference. And the Greek in both Gospels verifies that. Okay? So again, our wise men weren't at the manger, but all of our Christmas plays and all of our Christmas things have the wise men coming to the manger. That didn't happen. And again, is it wrong to put in there? No, it's not wrong. Like I said, it's a powerful symbol. I love it. I have a special affinity towards the wise men. I really like them and what they represent. Okay. So, and I just saw, and I should have included in here, I saw something on EWTN. There's been a new book out by a priest who did some research deconstructing the myths around the wise men. Did they even exist? Who were they? Where did they come from? And so he goes in and he actually does some research, historical, archaeological research of who these men were that came and saw Jesus. And by the way, just so you know, just kind of give you the punchline, there is a church in Cologne, Germany that claims